All right, what's up, everybody that's out there? Hope y'all. Uh, I'll wait a little bit for people to come in. Hope everybody can hear everything okay. Hope the mic's good, camera's decent. All right, so I hope everybody's doing all right out there. Hope you've had a great Christmas, enjoying your holiday, extended holiday, or whatever your line of work is. If you're a teacher like I am, then you get about 8-10 days off, something like that. Some of you get 2 weeks off. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you have quality time with family. If you're taking a little bit of break from football, kind of like kind of like I am in a way. We've got the weight room open a couple times for our kids to come in. I'm still studying, all the things that I want to study, as far as me learning. But as far as the grind of coaching after a season, I like to take a couple weeks off and enjoy my afternoons a little bit, trying to pick up playing golf again. So just trying to enjoy some, free time a little bit until it picks up again. We start our off-season workouts January 11th. So 4 days a week after school, not as intense as everything else, but, we go back to working out 4 days a week after school. So I like to kind of take a couple weeks off, relax a little bit, but I've been doing some research. I've been doing some studying. I've been looking at 3 high safety structures that we've talked about a little bit in the past. Been trying to figure out whether I want to play it with an odd front or an even front. If I play it with an even front, how do I cancel the gaps that I need to cancel out so that I can get the apex players that I need, versus 2x2, 3x1, 20 personnel, and then the looks I need versus any 21 personnel set. So just kind of looking into all that, how we can do it. Happy holidays, Kuroga. And just trying to figure out, one of the things I've looked at, evaluate schemes in the offseason to determine if you're okay. Matt, that's a great question. I've talked about that with a couple of my buddies in the profession, and I think the toughest thing to do as a head coach or a coordinator is try to figure out when your issues are scheme related and when your issues are either talent or execution related. In high school, we talk about this all the time. The difference in the talent level between two teams sometimes can be really, really dramatic, more so than college and the NFL. So it's hard sometimes if, depending on the types of opponents you're playing or how often you might be, overmatched. It's hard to determine whether it's a scheme problem or it's a personnel execution problem. Maybe it's a practice problem. Maybe you're not repping the things you need to rep enough. Happy holidays, Tom. Maybe whatever it may be. I think personally, Matt, it's one of the toughest calls for a head coach or a coordinator to make in high school is that how do we figure out if what we're doing gives us a chance to win, if we just do it better. One of the things I like to do is I like to kind of subjectively look at the games that I think the talent is even or close to even, see what our schemes do there, see how our execution is in those games, and then, kind of piece together from that what I think we might need to add or eliminate to become a better football team. The things we may need to do to protect the things that we do really well, things we may need to get away from that we spend time on that we really don't use. So I think in the offseason, that's always an extremely interesting question for coaches is while you're studying and learning, and then you're going back and self-scouting and self-evaluating the stuff that you did. Do you need to make holistic changes? Do you need to make schematic changes? Do you just have some personnel issues, or do you just have some technique, fundamental execution issues? Do you need to change your practice? Do you need to teach things differently or spend more time teaching one thing over another? Happy holidays, Marcos. So that's a tough one. I've been doing this for 24 years now, probably 21 as a head coach, one as an assistant high school coach, two as a graduate assistant in college, and it's just something that is it's hard. The problem with the offseason is the more you learn, the more you want to install and input into your offense and or defense, and then you kind of get away from maybe the things that you're good at already. So it's tough. You got to balance it out, but that's what makes the game so fun. That's what makes it so interesting to do year in and year out without getting mundane or boring. So bigger lineman helps. I think you have to have linemen that are a little bit more athletic. To be able to overtake some things. You can do it with leverage. You can do it with really good feet. The good thing about zone is you really don't need as much north-south movement, vertical movement off the ball. If you can get some displacement east and west, you're welcome, Matt. If you can get some displacement east and west, then you got a really good back that can see some things. And if you can get up to the second level while maintaining a body on the first level in zone schemes, I think you're okay. So I don't think you need to have huge linemen, but at some point, size is going to be a little bit of an issue depending on the people you're playing. So they don't need to be huge per se, in my opinion, but they need to be able to at least hold up at the point of attack and get a body on a body and displace it east and west or horizontally and give the back some room to run. So first off, Kuroga, the first thing I would tell you that the way I was taught when I was young, you really don't want to base a defense off of movement. Movement is something that you want to go to off of your base looks, whether it be movement or pressures. You don't want to base your every down system off of that, because if you come out first drive moving and they go right down the field, your only other choice is to move more, move differently. If you have a base package that you like, and then you add in movement or pressures, I think it gives you a little bit better game plan to start figuring out, all right, how much base are we playing? What's going on in base? All right, we have to move. We're having problems in base. And then you sprinkle in. To me, the thing about movement that's so good is when it's an added part of your base scheme, so the other team doesn't anticipate it every down. If you move every down, then they kind of understand you're going to move every down. Then you start building into tendencies, field boundary, strong, weak, right, left, formationally. So I think when you move as a changeup to your base system, to me, it's better. So whether you're an even front team that then builds in D-line stunts, or you're an odd front team, or a 50 team, a 3-3 stack team, 3-4, whatever looks it may be. I think if you build movement in, you have to have a base, in my opinion. And a base way of playing things, whether it's one gap, two gap, whether it's shaded front or head up stuff that you two gap. I think you need to start there and then build movement in, but that's just my opinion. Good tendencies to track during the game to help an offensive play caller. You want to be tracking, your first down calls. You want to be tracking what they're coming out in. You want to try and track fronts to personnel. So what fronts are they playing to, different sets that you have, or different personnel groups? What coverages are you getting to certain formations? Do they have any blitz tendencies in the first half? Are they blitzing on certain downs? Is it more zone pressure on certain downs or certain parts of the field? What's their short yardage tendency? So a lot of different things you can look at to get some halftime adjustments, but I don't think it's that much different than anything I would look at going into a game. I'd be looking at structure of the defense. I'd be looking at even odd, where they set the three or the shade, or, where am I getting any bubbles? What's the coverage doing? Where do they set? Do they have a nickel or an apex? Do they play them to the field all the time? Do they have an FIB check? Those are all the things I'd be looking at anyways going into the game. So those are all good things to have somebody. And then if somebody could chart your calls, if you could match up your calls and chart your calls based on what they're in, then you can kind of figure out per formation or personnel group what you're doing well and what works against what they're doing. Strength of O-line, are your players lifting the house in the weight room? No, Mike, I would say we're average probably in the weight room right now. We've had some years where we've been really good, but at any position, I think the stronger or the better you are in the weight room. Obviously, I think more success you're going to have. The big thing about the weight room for me that I try and get across to all of our players is, you're trying to build a mindset, you're trying to build a culture, you're trying to build an attitude, you're trying to build a work ethic. On top of getting strong and getting fast and injury prevention and all the things that strength training is there for, you're also trying to get yourself some type of culture, mindset, mentality Can we, can we do the things we need to do every day, whether or not we want to? Can we do the things we need to do depending on how we feel? Can we lift through soreness? Can we lift when we don't feel great? Can we finish workouts? Can we finish workouts when we're tired? Those are all the things that we're trying to kind of build in a weight room. To me, the mint front comes from Kirby Smart. I think Dave Aranda was running a version of it. Don't know if he called it the mint front or not. But from everything I've studied about it, it kind of came from Kirby Smart after losing the national championship game to Ohio State in 2014 or 15, and getting a bunch of points scored on him, and feeling like Ohio State had their defense kind of zoned in. He went and visited Tom Herman when Tom Herman got the job at Houston. Tom Herman told him to talk to the DC, Todd Orlando, who was a Dave Aranda guy and an odd front guy, and they talked about some things. And I think Kirby kind of developed his own package that was the mint front. Not 100% sure on that if that's where the term comes from, but that's where I know it. That's where I know it from, and it's really tight front with a C-gap area rusher that. For Georgia in their min front stuff, it's a guy that lines up away from the passing strength. So their nickel goes to the passing strength, their jack goes away from the passing strength, and he gives them that C-gap area player. He gives them an edge player. He gives them an edge rusher. Adds a little bit of pass rush into a tight front while they can still take away some interior gaps with the tight front to let their backers run and safeties fit and make plays. And they don't always rush the jack. They can replace with a fourth and drop the jack. But that's where, in my brief time studying the mint formation stuff and the mint front stuff, that's where that's kind of where I got it from. So I don't know if that's 100% true or not. But again, it's that's what I've studied the last couple of weeks, and that's what I've learned, and that's how I know it. So whether to me, it's kind of irrelevant where, if I was going to do a video on the history of it and I, misspoke on it or something like that, I would always want to research it a little bit more than that. But just to research it and where I've learned that I picked it up, through social media stuff and watching, YouTube and college games and NFL games and seeing guys playing some things and then trying to figure out what it was and then studying it from there, and came across couple articles with Kirby Smart going to the mint front, and that's where I got it. So pass situations on the 3-3, the rush 3 is we rush 3 as our base. We use the Mike as an add-on fourth rusher, a spy for the quarterback, and we don't include him in any of our base coverages, so we can use all of our normal split field coverage principles without the Mike involved. We do rush 4, 5, 6. Obviously, we send a fourth and play different coverages. We send 5 and play man free, 3 under 3 deep, 4 under 2 deep, and then we play. We send 6. Excuse me. When we send 6, we play some zero coverage. We play some 2 under 3 deep. So our base though is rushing 3, dropping 8, and using the Mike. It's really a 7-man coverage, not a drop 8. The Mike is a late add-on or a spy for the quarterback. So that's what we do. The tight front stuff is relatively new, especially in high school football, as far as the as far as the tight and not so much double eagle bear stuff, the more the 4-eye, inside eye, the tackles. I haven't played a lot of teams that have sat in it yet. I played some teams that have used it. We've used it. I haven't come across teams that have really sat in it all game yet, but I'm sure eventually you'll see it more and more as a base defense. Marcos, what do you mean contact levels? The amount of contact we can have in practice, contact during the game that we're evaluating. Just kind of elaborate on the question a little bit. Are you talking about grading kids on contact, whether it be execution of practice is one of those deals you kind of break it for us. We kind of break it down to what's live and what's not. How often are we going to thud and butt up and not go to the ground? How often are we going to actually tackle to the ground? How many tackling circuits are we going to do that involve contact? How many perimeter drills or inside run periods are going to involve contact? So I don't think there's really no set way to define it. In my opinion, it's just a matter of as a coach and as a head coach, kind of looking at your practice week and figuring out the drills you're doing, and then the periods you're doing that might have contact in them, whether it's an inside run or an outside run or a team run or some type of blitz pickup drill or tackling circuits or block, block destruction stuff. We'll kind of base it off of that, but I don't have a set system. I'm sorry. A typical week of practice look like for you? How many hours a day do you practice? How many days do you live? Do you practice? All right. So for us, our kids live 5 days a week in season. I have them in class, most of them. So the ones that I have in class are going to live 5 days a week. We're a little bit lighter with our lifts. We usually don't go past 80% on any of our lifts in season. We don't do a lot of overhead stuff in season. Thank you. We don't do a lot of overhead jerk stuff or any push press overhead stuff in season. I try to take it as easy as I can on the shoulder joints and the wrist joints and the elbow joints because guys are in contact, obviously all year long and you're banged up. So we practice 2 hours a day. Sometimes we'll start with meetings. Sometimes we'll start with film, depending on the situation that day or what we need. But we're never on the field for longer than 2 hours. I don't believe in being on the field longer than 2 hours. We're usually we're a tempo team, and we like to keep our practices moving. Try to videotape every practice, if not as many practices as we can, based on weather and help and video, videographers and managers, so that if we're videotaping, we can practice really fast and then go back and clean things up, and then share notes with the kids or maybe watch practice if we have to watch practice. But we're Monday. We're heavy special teams emphasis, clean up. Thank you, Brandon. Clean up stuff from the week before. The way we did it this year was our offense started out watching film. When we started practice, our defense went out on the field. We did some defensive special teams that didn't need offensive players. We did some formation rec for the upcoming week. We worked on our blitz tracks and coverages behind it based on formations for the upcoming week. And then the offense came out after that and installed anything new for the week. And then they looked at the fronts that they were going to see. And then Tuesday, Wednesday are heavy days. Usually that's where all our contact occurs on Tuesday and Wednesdays. And, those are days where we're going to have our inside periods and our skeleton periods and our team periods. And on defense, we're going to have our blitz periods and tackling circuits. And Thursday for us is a walkthrough. We usually do it in Spirit Pack on the game field. We break it up into about 2 10-minute segments on offense and defense. Offense usually does some type of screen period, and then they do some type of team period. Defense usually does some type of base period and then some type of pressure period. And then we go through a script of special team stuff where we'll kick off, and then, depending, we change it up throughout the year, but we might kick off, bring the defense out for 2 plays, call out punt return, bring the offense out for 2 plays, call out punt, go to field goal maybe, or kick return, or try to cover every special team at least once, if not twice, based on the schemes that we are using. If we're using different kickoffs or returns or punts, try to get at least 1 punt block look, 1 punt return look, try to get a PAT look, and then a field goal look. If we're doing muddle huddle, always try to get a muddle huddle look and practice the plays that are in on muddle huddle. And then Friday's game day. So that's typical week of practice for us. I'll change it up here and there based on how the kids feel, if we need a break, how we're playing, what's going on. But that's generally a typical week of practice for us. We don't do a ton of physical stuff in the off season, Mike. We've done some mat drills before. We've done some tug of war stuff. I like to try and do as much competition in the weight room and in our runs as I can. And then once we're allowed to start doing 7-on-7, try to do as much skill and drill work with our receivers, quarterbacks, and DBs as we can. And then our linemen are more so on the board, watching film, doing those things. We can't really go into great detail with them with any contact or any blocking scheme. So, not a big, huge mat drill guy, not a huge physical off-season guy. I know it works. I know it's great. We're trying to build that mentality in the weight room with things we're doing. We're trying to build that competitive nature there. And then when spring football comes in Florida in May or April, whenever it happens to be, that's when the physicality kind of ramps up a little bit. So, for me, it kind of goes Potros, it kind of goes, obviously you've got your initial scouting and game plan stuff on the weekend. You meet with your offense and your defense. We meet on Sundays. You put your game plans in, and then you go into the week. But I'll spend a little bit of time every day on my off periods, planning periods, or after practice at night. I'll spend a little bit of time going back through different games and watching offense, defense, special teams. And, so by the time Friday comes, I've watched a lot of film. You'd like to go into the game and onto the field as prepared as you can as a coach, knowing you've covered all the scenarios that you need to cover and making sure you've checked all different games for fakes and anything that maybe went unnoticed the first time you looked before your game plan meeting. So, generally by the end of the week, I've watched a ton of film once it's all said and done. And now Fridays, when I have more free time, depending on when we're bringing the kids back or when the team meal is or what we're doing on game day. A lot of times on Friday, I happen to have last period of the day planning period, so my last class leaves at 12:15. If I don't have anything team related till 2:30 or 3 o'clock, depending on home or away games, I usually have about 2 hours to kind of sit down and go through film again one more time and see if there's anything different I pick up from the opponent. We didn't play a ton of guys both ways this year. We had some situational guys that played both ways, some skill players, very few linemen. But we, as a coaching staff, we've been talking about it. This was my 5th year at the program that I'm currently at. We're not getting over the hump. We're stuck in that 4-win, 5-win, 6-win range. We've been 6-4, 5-5, 4-5, 4-6. So we want to figure out how to get over that hump. And I think one of the ways to get over that hump is to play our best players both ways. Obviously change the way we practice a little bit, change the install on offense and defense, and narrow our playbook down to things that the kids can understand and execute if they're playing both ways. But kind of figured out after being at a place for 5 years and kind of getting back into playoff hunt, getting back in the district championship hunt, but not getting past that 5-6 win mark. It's time to change. It's time to do things a little bit different. So we're a 5A school, about 1,600 kids, about 85 football players on the team. So our numbers are not terrible. Our depth is not terrible, but the fall from a 1 to a 2 or a 2 to a 3 is pretty dramatic. So, sometimes when you're trying to build an offense and a defense without playing guys both ways, you get down into numbers where, you got some starters at some positions that really technically maybe wouldn't be starters. So, maybe you just keep them as backups and you got to play them a little bit more as backups in a game if you're playing guys both ways, because you're going to get tired, and knock on wood, you don't get injured. But that's just one of the things as a coaching staff and as a head coach I'm kind of looking at. It's been 5 years. We've tried to play offensive and defensive, personnel and not play a bunch of guys both ways. And, we need to do something a little bit different to get over the hump. So that's just one of those things. Where are you located, Tom? A friend of mine, it's a local high school coach here, Coach John Wolford, and he's kind of checked that he's gonna get a start if Jared Goff's hurt or not playing well. So he's texting about it right now. So, Iona territory, Tom. Can't say I'm a fan. Yeah, obviously New York football is not as big. You're dealing with soccer during that time of year, and a lot of kids are going into lacrosse now and doing other things. So I imagine, I know I grew up on Long Island, so we didn't have a ton of football players on our team. Our guys played both ways. We played special teams. Obviously, New York and Florida are two different animals when it comes to heat and how hot it is when we play. But we were playing games on Saturday afternoons at 1 o'clock. So some of those games in September, it was hot and just had to be in good shape. And that was nothing new. That was nothing new back then. So everybody was playing their best players both ways. And guys weren't as big and as fast as they are now, looking back 30 years ago. Obviously, teams had good players. There were a lot of good players running around, but we had an NFL player on our team. My best friend growing up played for the Detroit Lions for 8 years. So it's not that there was no talent. It's just that, the talent was nowhere near as deep as it is in Florida. and football wasn't as important in New York as it is in Florida. So, it's just it's one of those things that where you're at in New Rochelle, it's going to be tough to get guys. I understand. I empathize, not emphasize. I emphasize it should be more important, and I empathize with you to try and get guys out, because I still have friends that coach on Long Island, and they talk about all the same problems and all the same issues. So you probably don't really have a choice but to play guys both ways when your numbers are like that. And I imagine, yeah, before he went to Rutgers, nice. I imagine, obviously soccer, lacrosse are going to get huge numbers, and people are still buying into the fact that at younger ages that football's not a safe game, which is absolutely ridiculous to think that we still have that concept in our mind. But it's just one of those things you have to deal with all the time. So, you probably, if you lived there your whole life, you've been around, you know what it is, you know what you're getting into. So it's not a surprise. I've never seen a 4-3 tape from Dave Wanstead. I've never come across that, but may check it out if I get a chance now. Great question. Average opinion. Depends on how willing those guys are to learn. Depends on whether or not those guys want to learn new things, or if they just want to run the things that they know. Depends on their energy level and how much they love football. It's tough to do with older guys if they don't. If they're not willing to go out and learn and study the game that has changed so much and that has evolved so much, if they're not willing to do that, it's going to be tough to do. But one thing I can tell you, average, is if you try to make things sound like they're their idea, not your idea. So if you can find a way somehow to sprinkle some new things in that might be viewed as their idea, a lot of older coaches are a lot more inclined to do things when they feel like it's their idea. So if you can broach the subject that way or approach it that way, I think you might have a little bit more success. Very dominant 3 technique. We'll probably lose him for the next year. I think it's smart to sprinkle a bit of 3-3. Odd front stuff and 3-3 stuff is good at our level because you can't always find dominant 1 and 3 techniques, and if you do, you can't find 4 of them. It's tough when you're playing 4 down linemen. A lot of times you end up playing linebackers at defensive end, or kids that maybe aren't real defensive ends because you can't find those bodies. It's the biggest deal. I've talked about this on YouTube Live and in videos that I've done recently. If you look at Iowa State and the evolution of the defense that they're playing right now, they started off when Matt Campbell got the job and John Haycock came with him. They started off as an even front team, more of a 4-3 base, 4-2-5-ish, if you want to call it that. And they realized that they didn't have the kids year in and year out to play that, and they couldn't recruit those kids at that time where they were in the landscape of the big dogs in that area, in the Big 12 and in recruiting. And so they went to the odd stuff that's kind of hybrid 3-3, 3-4 with 3 high safeties, and because they could recruit more of those types of kids, and then they could build kids into the players that they needed them to be, because they couldn't find, the dominant 1 techniques and 3 techniques are going to end up at the top 15, 20 schools in recruiting in the nation, the blue bloods, so to speak. I've done a video about that as well. There's so few of those body types that are that athletic, that can move at 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2", 6'3", 300 pounds plus, that they're really few and far between. And the ones that are that good are going to go to the Alabamas and the Clemsons and the Ohio States and the Floridas of the world, and the Texas and Oklahoma. So I think Iowa State is a really great look for high school people and high school coaches and lower level coaches, because they adapted a scheme that fits their players, because they can't go out and find those types of kids. So there's nothing wrong with odd front stuff. It's a little more moving pieces, in my opinion. I think even front stuff is easier to coach. I think even front stuff becomes more plug and play sometimes, which is why I like it. But the odd stuff is different. Putting somebody on the center in high school is a really big deal to me, because I think the center has a tendency to be one of the weaker linemen in the group. It's probably just a kid that happens to be, if they're shotgun teams, it might be a kid that just happens to be the best or the only kid that can shotgun snap. I know for us, we struggle at the center position a lot. And when we do, teams put their best player on a nose and just give us fits. They demand double teams, and that center's having a long night snapping the ball, trying to block a kid. So, those are some of the reasons we would go to odd. So if you lose that 3 technique, I wouldn't. I wouldn't be hesitant to look at odd stuff at all. And based on the coverage structure you're playing in the 4-2-5, you might find the 3-3 stuff is actually how you fit it is up to you and might be slightly different. But a 3-3 box and a 4-2 box both have 6 players. So when you're looking at C gap to C gap in that box, it's very similar. So you can probably get away with playing. You can probably get away with playing 3-3 stack stuff with the same coverage as you're playing right now, in my opinion. We work on rugby stuff. We work on hawk tackling. We work on gator roll tackling, all that stuff that's out there. I think you have to. I actually just did a video recently talking about struggling with tackling, and I think not to take away from all the things that we're trying to do to keep players safe, but I think that style of tackling with the head behind the ball and limiting contact and practice, I think the game is as safe now probably as it's ever been, even with the size and speed of players. But I think the game is also a little bit flawed technique-wise, fundamental-wise. I think there's a lot of bad tackling going on at every level. I think it's because we don't do it as much. We can't go live as much in practice. I think, concentrating so much on keeping the head behind and out of contact and the rugby tackle stuff. And, it's just led to a little bit tougher ordeal tackling wise. And I think offenses are getting better, getting their guys in space and creating a lot of open field stuff that makes tackling tougher. So, yeah, we've seen teams that play stand-up ends, 6 techniques, 5 techniques, even stand-up guys, 7 techniques inside eye of the tight end. TCU did it a bunch back in the day. They still do with their 4-2-5 stuff because they couldn't find defensive ends, 6'3", 270-pound kids that can run. So they ended up playing linebackers more often at defensive end. So they played them standing up because those kids are more comfortable standing up. So that's obvious. That's something that's pretty pretty standard. It's more standard than you think, Mike. I think playing stand-up guys, it's a little bit different, but I think there's more people out there doing it than you think. Our center makes most of our line calls, depending on what we're trying to run. If we were a zone team, inside zone and wide zone, he would definitely make all the point calls and all the declarations. He makes a lot of the calls for us with fronts. He makes a lot of the calls for us with protection stuff. So, but a lot of our stuff is built in and not have the center have that much to do. Depending on the type of kid he is, I'd rather control that as a coaching staff than have a 15-year-old, 16-year-old center do it. But based on some of the schemes you're running, it's going to be inevitable that your center has to make some calls. How do you get the calls in when the team is playing tempo offense? We have a base system that we feel pretty good against tempo teams. Our defense is kind of a check with me system within our base coverages. We align the formations, and we have our standard base coverages based on formations that we like. If it's tight end flanker pro sets, or if it's 2 removed, or if it's trips 3 removed, or trips with a tight end, or just a nub tight end on the backside. So we've got our standard. We teach our defense that way from day one. And if teams are going really, really fast, we end up playing a lot more base. And then, we limit our blitz calls to maybe, field boundary and middle pressures that we like that we can signal in really quick. So I feel like we do a decent job. Any team that's really good at what they do with their tempo is always going to give a defense fits. I think we do a decent job. I think how you practice it, trying to have multiple huddles and different ways of getting your kids to understand how fast they're going to play and how you need to get to the football, look for a call, in between. The thing you got to keep in mind is the ball still has to be set. Referees have to set the ball. There's a lot of things that have to go on no matter how fast the team plays. So if your kids understand in practice how at the end of a play, they need to find the ball and get their eyes to the sideline to get a call, you'd be surprised how much you can get in that 15 to 20 seconds that you have before they're going to snap the ball again. Rugby style tackling in the UK since most of our players started out, and we always thought using your head was madness. Yeah, obviously using your head without a helmet is madness. When you have a helmet on and you have your face mask up, your neck is actually just like boxers or UFC. ultimate fighting guys or mixed martial arts guys, your neck is made to go back, and you train lifts to get your traps stronger so that your neck can go back. Your neck is not made to go down and compress. Your spine is not made to compress like that. So ducking your head with a helmet on obviously is an issue. But as far as having a helmet with a face mask, back in the old days, you were taught to put your face mask on somebody, put your face mask on the ball, get chest to chest. And so, head down is never safe. You got to see what you're going to hit, but face mask up with a face mask on to protect your face from damage that you don't have in rugby. And then with your face up and your neck being able to go back, you can train the muscles around your neck just like a fighter would to get stronger, so you can take some of that impact back. You just can't take impact straight on the top of the head down. Your spine can't go down like that. So it might be a little bit madness, but I think with a helmet on and the way helmets are nowadays, if you can keep your face up and keep your neck moving in a way it's meant to move, and your muscles impacting the neck and not your spine. Your spine, regardless of how much you train, your spine is not meant to take that compression. So, there's different beliefs. I envy the rugby guys. I think it's such a great physical game. I think those guys are so tough. And the way they tackle is amazing with no pads on. So obviously it was a matter of time until the NFL and college guys started studying rugby guys, which probably the ultimate tacklers. But I just feel like tackling is getting worse. And that's not a knock on rugby at all. Our game has benefited from rugby. Our game has benefited from rugby-style tackling. And I am very fortunate that somebody was able to correlate those two things and study and research rugby players. But I feel like in the last 4 or 5 years, we're missing way more tackles than we ever had before. And it could be a coaching deal. I could be coaching it worse. Maybe we don't spend enough time or enough fundamentals. Maybe the kids just don't understand the fundamentals of tackling. Most kids that get involved in the game, they want to hit people. If you have physical players, they enjoy contact and they want to hit. That's what makes a football player a little bit different. Kids that enjoy contact and like hitting, but hitting is not tackling. Tackling is an art. Tackling is a technique, and it's a form. And I feel like even the most physical of players sometimes don't want to work on the technical fundamentals of tackling. They just want to hit. And to me, there's times to hit and there's times to tackle, and more often than not in a football game, in today's game, with all the spread offenses, you have to tackle more than you're going to hit. We're not playing a 21 personnel game in the box anymore where, everything's kind of in a phone booth. It's now quarterback run, spread, field using the whole field, grass numbers, angles. So I think tackling has to be taught even more because the technique is even harder now. I've done some things from Tony Franklin, terminology wise with some tempo things. I've obviously looked at Mike Leach with what he does in the passing game because I think it's phenomenal. But as far as systems, we're not a Tony Franklin system. We're not a Mike Leach air raid team. I've studied a lot of terminology that I use and things that I do are from Noel Mazzone when he was with UCLA and Texas A&M, and most recently had been with Arizona, and he had been in the NFL for a little bit, so his passing game was, I always thought was pretty good because it had a lot of NFL concepts behind it, but he was a spread guy that understood the college game. So I studied a lot of Noel Mazzone stuff, and then obviously, recently Lincoln Riley stuff. Always been a fan of Dana Holgerson. So there's so much good stuff and so many good guys out there right now and doing a lot of great things, and so many smart. Sarkisian at Alabama is phenomenal. Lane Kiffin is one of the best play callers in the business. Just so many really good, smart guys. Clemson's had their hands on, whether it's Tony Elliott or Chad Morris, or so many good guys out there that are really smart. So, I mean, it's endless what you could study right now. Offensively right now, we're looking at a little bit more split back, a little bit more 20 personnel. We have a really good sophomore back that we have to feature. We've got a really good sophomore offensive lineman that we have to feature, so we use more tackle pull schemes because that kid's a tackle. 6'3", 270-pound kid. It's really athletic, one of the best linemen I've been around in a long time. So we try to use more dart or tackle wrap schemes, more GT counter, and pull him. But we're looking a little bit more using using hybrid tight ends that can line up as tight ends, Y off type stuff, or in the slot, be a vertical threat, but also be somebody that can add themselves back into the box and kick an end, wrap and bluff on an outside linebacker, things like that. So, like everybody else this time of year, just studying what's out there, looking at all the great things that are out there. I think Coastal Carolina was the hot ticket flavor of the month for a little while with the option stuff they had built in. So, football is that type of game. It kind of runs that way. It gets hot and cold with different systems and different coaches. And, the flavor of the month or whatever's hot is what gets studied and people try to implement into their system. But I'm not a system guy. I like different ideas. I like option football. I like trying to carry some version of read game in our package. I like to carry RPOs because RPOs are, in my opinion, option football on steroids. I'm at a place where I think we need to read as many people as possible, and RPOs gives us a chance to do that if we can block the 6 in the box and throw off a 7 and 8 rather than always try to find ways to get 7 or 8 blocked. I'm always looking for new ways to communicate, new ways to teach a quarterback how to read those things, and new ways to find RPOs to attack different places on the field, attack inside linebackers, attack overhangs, third level safety. So, it's not a system for me. It's a matter of going out and borrowing ideas that I like and studying the game and looking at things that I really like and trying to put them into my offense. And I do the same thing on defense. I'm trying to implement some of Iowa State's 3 high safety stuff into what we do on defense. Whether or not we mix it in with our 3-3 stack or if we go back to 4-2-5, I'm always trying to take the ideas that I learn and study, always talking to other high school coaches, and trying to figure out what we can do in our systems and how to make our systems better. I'm not I've talked about this in several videos. I'm not a firm believer in one true system. I think there's a lot of ways to move the ball. There's a lot of ways to score points. Mike, we don't see a lot of wing T offenses where I am, but there's still wing T football in Florida. There's still teams winning state titles in the wing T across the nation. There's still teams scoring 50 points in the wing T across the nation. So that style of offense, if that's what you're into, is awesome. Air raid, if that's what you're into, I think is very good. Flexbone, if that's what you're into, is very good. But I'm a firm believer that you don't need a system, quote unquote, or a systematic description of your offense. I think you need concepts that build off of one another. You can't be a grab bag team that goes in and has a million plays. I think you need to simplify what you're doing, but there's no reason you can't throw the ball while using option principles, while using spread formations, while using the field, while being a power run team, while using quarterback runs. I think I think the best offenses are built with all those things in mind, and then they got to fit your personnel, do what your kids do best. So I appreciate it, Mark. Glad this stuff helps. That's why I try and do it. It's kind of a way to give back to people, but it's also therapy for me in a way. Being able to connect with people that I never would have met in my life, that before social media, before YouTube, and just coaching in the area I'm coaching in. Obviously, I would have built the relationships and friendships and the collegiality in the area I'm in. But as far as nationally and then internationally, being able to do something that has allowed me to converse with so many different people from across so many platforms, as crazy as it sounds, across the world, talking with people from the UK and talking with people from Germany and talking with people from Brazil and Australia and so many different places that are starting to pick up American football. And I never would have been able to, in my wildest dreams, imagine that, I'd be on a Zoom call with coaches in Germany, or I'd have followers from England or Ireland or Scotland or, Norway, Finland, Brazil, Mexico, Canada. It's just one of those things that started the way I started it with the YouTube stuff. And it's just one of those things that I'm grateful for. So I'm glad the videos help. 353 at Mississippi State. I looked DCU came from San Jose State. This year or this past year, or the San Jose State stuff, or probably goes back at some point to Rocky Long or the West Coast guys that Rocky Long had done it before, and I didn't look at Mississippi State stuff this year. No, I've looked at a bunch of different. I've looked at some Tulsa stuff. I've looked at a bunch of different 3-3 teams that are doing it now, but I haven't studied any of the Mississippi State stuff this year. No. Um, yeah, I mean we're not sequential like the wing tee is. I think the wing tee becomes sequential in its nature that you have your runs, and then based on who's making the tackles, you kind of determine how to call your runs. So you run the down play, and based on who makes the tackle, you come back with trap or belly, and then based on that, you come back with buck, and then based off that, you come back with waggle, or so we're not systematic in those means. Um, our run actions are usually very similar to wing tee in nature. We're a gap team, so we've got power, we've got counter, we've got a way to get to our read game, whether it's inside zone or duo type play, which is gap blocking without a puller. And then we run buck from the spread. So I think we're very similar to wing tee in the run game. We're just not sequential in how we call it. All of our plays always try to protect each other. We try to use same as plays where we're in similar formations and we just change the presentation of the play, but we run the same things. I like trying to keep the blocking schemes for my kids up front as simple as possible. All the window dressing and all the fancy stuff comes from the skill players because that's easy for them. The O-line know we're going to block power and we're going to run it 5 different ways. We're going to block counter and we're going to run it 5 different ways. We're going to block, our gap duo play and we're going to run it 5 different ways. And then we're going to build RPOs off of power counter and duo, and then we're going to run buck and we RPO off of buck. So, always your play should always protect each other. It's not a grab bag system. We're not, we're not just out there flying by the seat of our pants calling plays. We're building formations and schemes that protect each other. We're building action passes and bootlegs off of our runs, and doing all the things that I think all good offenses do. Favorite play? Offensively, I've always been a huge fan of power read, the power play in general, and all the different ways now, toss read, all the different ways that you can run power. I've always been a big fan of gap schemes. So, I would say for me, some of the best success I've had on offense has been with power read stuff, toss power read, jet power read, just off the power play in general. I would say is probably one of my favorite schemes in general. Any play that gets a first down or scores a touchdown, I like a lot too. So I think spread is a very vague term. I've had this conversation with several people. I've done a video on it before. I really don't know. Spread is a more formational thing than it is an offense. I think spread, you're using formations to spread the field, but then most spread teams, if you look at who you would consider your best spread teams, I'd be willing to bet you that they're running, probably some downhill inside gap scheme runs, and a lot of their run game is probably conducive to old wing tee guys. They just don't stay formationally in a wing tee system. So, I think there's so many. If you go back to the, wing tee single wing premises, I think there's so many great offenses out there today at college and the NFL that are using those principles. They're just not doing it formationally the same way the standard wing tee teams would do it. They're breaking formations to make it tougher to defend, and then they're incorporating. Wing tee teams had a lot of belly option built in, so they were running option football. So option football has been around for a long time, and a lot of systems use it. And now with the shotgun stuff, RPOs. Now you can be spread wing tee and build RPOs if you got a quarterback that can throw it. So I think all that stuff is really cool and really neat. And guys that do it have a lot of success. I've seen it done. I've seen buck RPOs. I've seen trap RPOs. Kick the end of the 3 with the read sign. If you're a 10 personnel 2x2 team and a team gives you a 5-man box with 2 overhangs, you can run inside trap and RPO off the overhangs because your 5 linemen can block the 5 in the box. It's nothing different. RPOs are their throws off of extra defenders, but your guys in the box can block any trap scheme, G-fold scheme, dart scheme, inside zone scheme, anything where you feel like you can block 5 in the box that they give you and then read a 6th or a 7th. You can run any of those plays. Landon, I think inside zone and outside zone is a great way to base your offense. There's so many complements to it, and you can get really good at it. We've had a really hard time in high school getting good at wide zone. A lot of it is probably I don't coach it well enough. Maybe don't spend enough time on it. This offseason, we kind of sold out to being an inside zone, wide zone team, and 3 games in, we went back to gap schemes just because we weren't good at it. But I think there's a ton of college and NFL offenses that are exclusive inside zone, wide zone based, and then their offense runs off of that. 49ers would be one of the first ones that comes to mind. A lot of NFL teams are inside zone, outside zone based, so it's definitely a great way to play football. I think the biggest trend right now in defensive football is odd front, tight front, 3 high safety defense, which has kind of been dubbed as the air raid killer because Iowa State's had so much success being able to play really good defense and get into the conference championship game and beating some really good programs the last couple of years with it. So 3 high safety stuff I think is new. Offensively, I think the RPO game keeps evolving. How you're getting your quarterback to read those things keeps evolving. I think you still see tempo at the forefront of a lot of good offenses. And I think the change in tempo, teams starting to use tempo that you wouldn't expect it. So teams like Alabama at times all of a sudden gunning it up and going up tempo. And I think the mixture of tempo and I think option football is coming back. All the different things Coastal Carolina was doing, speed option off of different looks, the different backfield looks, the different footwork for the quarterbacks. So I think option football, along with RPO option football, is making its way back. So I think that's the trend you're going to see. Have a good New Year, Potros. I'm not the greatest guy to talk to about the NFL because I don't study it a ton, just because I think our game is really different at our level. I think our level is way more conducive to college football. So when I'm studying stuff, I study college football because I think those are things that we can do in our own way. I think the NFL is still, to this day, a heavy passing game. I think you've got to have a great trigger man. I live in Jacksonville, and I've never seen a city so excited. I grew up in New York. I was raised on Long Island. I grew up around the Jets and the Giants and major professional sport markets. And I've seen a lot of crazy things in my life, but I have not seen anything like the excitement in Jacksonville when the Jets won last week and then won again this week and gave it, basically locked in the first pick for the Jags and Trevor Lawrence. And this town is so excited. The businesses are so excited. People are ready to buy season tickets again just because of one player, and that player happens to be a trigger man. And in the NFL, I think you have to have a quarterback. I think you've got to have a really good one, and I think you have to throw the ball no matter who they are. I think the hybrid athletic quarterbacks are having a lot of success. I think, not to say that Patrick Mahomes is that guy. He's just an electric player with a dynamic arm talent that just so happens to extend plays. But Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray and those guys are having success in the NFL. You're seeing more of them year in and year out. But I still think at the end of the day, when you look at the NFL, you still have Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Josh Allen in the fold now. You still have dominant pocket quarterbacks that throw the football and throw it a bunch. That, to me, is now how you win in the NFL. You have to have some version of a ground game. I don't think you can throw it 70 times a game. You got to have some version of a defense. I don't think you can give up 60. But nowadays in the NFL, to me, it seems like it is a passing league. You have to have a great trigger man, and based on the excitement in the Jacksonville area to get, quote unquote, right now, get Trevor Lawrence. There's never been more excitement in this area in the 25 to 30 years of the franchise, however long it's been. So I think you got to have that guy. And I think in high school, you can get away without having that guy. I think you can use an athlete that runs more. I think you can throw passes that are conversion routes and 3rd and 8 or less. I don't think being able to throw the ball vertically in high school is tremendous. I think you can take some shots here or there with some throws a quarterback can make, but you can win with undersized quarterbacks. You can win with athletes at the high school level. So, so many different ways to play the game. But if you're, in a roundabout way, getting back to my point, I think the NFL for me is so much trigger man induced and so quarterback intensive that the college game to me is a little bit more conducive to what we're doing. I I always err on doing less than more. I used to when I was younger. I did way too much. We never got good at anything. I'd go back and look at it, and we'd have a collection of plays, but no concepts. We'd try to run back in the old days, in the late 1990s, early 2000s, before the spread stuff. And we were tight end base. We were 21 personnel. We tried to run power, counter, toss, trap, belly, inside zone. We tried to run everything, and we were good at nothing. So I've always, as I get older, the more I coach football and the older I get, I think less is more. I think carrying simple schemes that you can change the presentation and add window dressing to them. I think the ability to now read ends and read second level players and RPOs. I think you can carry 3 or 4 run schemes that you can sugar up so much with jet motion and other action and other formation wrinkles that you can keep. You can be very simplistic but very diverse and multiple on offense. I think that's to me, that's the most exciting thing about offense nowadays is you can stay simplistic in nature within your rules and your schemes and be very diverse and very multiple in your offense. I think that's exciting. Trigger man needs a great line. Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Murray, etc. Can't make do with a subpar line. Yeah, there's more value in that guy because he extends plays and he gets you out of some plays. But eventually, even those guys without a line, you don't win with unless you're good up front in the NFL. You got to be good up front. Usually O-line, D-line, the better O-line, D-line teams win. Those guys extend plays and they create excitement. But if you don't block for them, I don't care who they are, you're not winning. Yeah, I think the rules have something to do with that, but I think guys have figured out that there's probably in the NFL there's with the size of defensive players now, there's more explosive in the passing game. You're trying to create explosive plays in the NFL. I think more explosives come from passing. When you watch high school football, more explosives probably come in the run game 90% of the time. I think in the NFL, the explosives come from the passing game. And then I think the matchups are a little bit easier to find in the passing game in the NFL when you can, the best coaches in the NFL have a way to create formational or matchups in coverage that they can win and revolve around that. All the things New England used to do with slot players and all the things that the new guys like Sean McVay and those guys are doing. They're finding ways formationally and structurally to create matchups that their guys can win. So that's why I think it's such a pass-heavy league, in my opinion. I don't know how funny, Chris, it would be. I think it would be devastating for Jacksonville. Obviously, you live here, so you understand it. I think it would be devastating if he didn't come back. I think right now, you take a franchise that was frowned upon, and depending on what they do with the coaching situation, if per se, I'm not all in on getting rid of Doug Marrone. One of the things I do look at is if you want people to buy in, there needs to be change. So Doug Marrone may be a victim of circumstance. I think there's been a lot of things that have gone against him in his tenure. How he's handled the media the last 2 years with what's gone on, I give him all the credit in the world. I would have snapped on the media a long time ago, talking to him about getting Trevor Lawrence and losing games when you're a head coach in a professional sport that you're trying to win every game you play, and he handles those answers with class and dignity. But if they were to make a coaching change, the head coaching spot and the GM spot in Jacksonville is now one of the most coveted spots in the country. And you take a franchise that has been kind of, for the last, generationally, except for a couple good years here or there, you take a franchise that has been down and out and kind of a laughing stock sometimes of the national media, and it's now one of the best landing spots for a GM and a coach if they go. If not, if Doug Marrone's here, that's fine. As far as a GM, it'll be one of the best landing spots with the picks that they now have, top picks in almost every round, the ability to build around a generational quarterback like a Trevor Lawrence. And then go from there. But at the end of the day, you got to win. As good as Trevor Lawrence is, all the talk in the national media right now is obviously they wanted Trevor Lawrence to go to the Jets because the market. They talk about the market all the time, and to me, the player makes the market. Guys can go to average NFL cities per se, and they don't have to be in LA or New York to become superstars. Trevor Lawrence is a superstar. He's already a superstar. He's already a a mainstream face in everybody's living room. He doesn't need to be in any different market to be a superstar. He just needs to win, and he needs to turn a franchise around. If he turns Jacksonville around, being in Jacksonville will be 100 times better, than it would in New York without having to dealing with the savagery of the media in New York and how crazy and unrealistic sometimes fan bases in New York can be. I think the Jags right now, I think Jag fans are willing to build around that guy. I think they want that guy. Everybody wants to go in. I see dads talking about already getting Trevor Lawrence jerseys for their sons. And I see businesses already talking about how much they're going to support the Jags again and season tickets again. So it's a great time to be in Jacksonville. Hopefully he comes out. I don't see what going back, even if they lose, obviously, he's a national champion. He's done a lot of things in college that I don't think he needs to go back to do, and his stock right now is absolutely through the roof. In my opinion, there's no need for him to go back, but would be sad if he did. Triggerman, Tom Brady is Tom Brady, and as good as Belichick is, as much as I love Belichick, coaches don't play the game. Anytime you think it's a Saban or a Belichick away from being a great team, just remember that they have great players, and without those players, they wouldn't be. They'd still be great coaches. They'd still be masterminds, but they wouldn't be as good. You take Belichick without Brady and some other moves, and roster things that have gone on, and they don't make the playoffs. You take Nick Saban and put him at Vanderbilt, and he's not 11-0 in the national championship. Maybe could he get it done? I don't know. But the bottom line is it's a game that's played by players. Better players win. Bigger, faster players usually beat smaller, slower players. Those guys are great coaches. They're excellent at what they do. The mental management, how they manage teams and egos and personnel from top to bottom is incredible. But without those guys, they're not as good as they are. I think Urban Meyer you can put in that same boat. Urban Meyer's a master motivator. He's a competitive guy that hates losing. His teams thrive on the hatred of losing. And it's the same thing. I'll say the same thing with Urban Meyer. If Urban Meyer goes to a Rutgers or a bottom Big Ten team, is he as successful as he is at Ohio State? No, of course not. Could he build it to get there? Maybe. But the bottom line is when you go, when you're at Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, places like that, and you're getting top 5 classes every year, if you're a good coach, you're going to be in the mix for the national championship every single year. But the bottom line is, Nick Saban hasn't made a tackle in 60 years. Bill Belichick hasn't completed a pass in ever. If he did ever throw one when he played in high school or wherever. But those guys don't play anymore. The game is won with players as much as, even for me as a coach, as much as I love coaching, as much as I love schemes, as much as I love doing YouTube videos, when you do a YouTube video with a scheme, the better the X's and the O's are in the diagram, the better that scheme is. So, it's a game of players. Trevor Lawrence is generational, and none of those coaches are as good without a triggerman. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Kansas City's a huge market, and Pat Mahomes is a big star. New England's always been a pretty good market with the Boston area and the Red Sox and the Celtics. So I'm not going to say, New England / Boston is a bad market. It's a pretty huge market, but I don't think Kansas City is a huge national market. And now Mahomes is in the spotlight with everything he does. So it's just the player will make that. And if they're good enough, and if they're good enough players, if they're good enough personalities, they'll make it. Whoever would have thought that Peyton Manning was the personality that he is? The guy's a gem. He's funny. He's comedic in his approach. Obviously, he can act enough to be in commercials. So the players and the personality will make the market. The market helps a little bit, but if you're a star, you're a star. Trevor Lawrence is an absolute star. He's got it. He's got the talent. He's got the look. He doesn't need to be in any market. He can be anywhere. Mackenzie Milton, if healthy, will be very good for FSU. I think he does the things that Mike Norvell wants to do. I think he'll bring that locker room hopefully back to a down-to-earth work mentality. That program, I think, has suffered enough. I think they've gone through some phases with, some misses on some talent and then some bad locker rooms. I think The FSU mystique has worn off. I think they got to get back to a place that works hard, builds their program around a blue collar mentality while getting, great 4 or 5 star athletes. And I think Norvell's the guy. I like him. I think Mackenzie Milton could be if healthy, but coming off that injury, you have no idea. So I don't know what to expect. I'd always rather see a feeder program. I'd like to see Pop Warner programs in a neighborhood where all those kids go to one school. I'd like to see junior high programs where all those kids go to one school, but where we're at in Florida right now, it's not that way. You're going to see kids from neighborhoods go to 5 different schools. They're going to go where the flavor of the month. They're going to go to the school that's hot. They're going to go to the school that sells them the best. They're going to go to the school that talks to them the most. So it's one of the downfalls right now of high school football. We've gone away from a neighborhood game. We've gotten away from a game where you have a house in a neighborhood you pay taxes in, and that's where you play football. We've gotten to a free agent market in high school. We've gotten to a chase 13-year-olds in high school. And, that's one of the things for me that's probably not going to change. I try to sell my school. I try to sell my program to the kids in my neighborhood, but I'm not going to, chase 13-year-old kids and sell myself out to, try and create an environment where the inmates are on the asylum and I'm selling myself out to parents and kids just to get better players. You live in this neighborhood. I promote my school, my program, my coaching staff, our weight room, our field, our facilities. I do everything I can to promote it, but I'm not a college coach. I don't recruit. I don't want to recruit. But if you're asking me, I would much rather have a Pop Warner system into a junior high system that is a feeder to one high school. And I'd love all those coaches and everybody in the neighborhood to be bought into that program and build it that way. I think that's the best way to go about it. Yeah, I think Brad Johnson's son is next at LSU. I think finding coordinators is probably what's up. Obviously, Joe Burrow's another generational talent, but I think, the offensive coordinator had a hell of a lot to do that. So I'm a public school. I'm not a private school. Halftime adjustment, a real thing. I hear is everything. Halftime adjustments is a real thing, but I don't think it's as important as some people make it. For us in high school, you get by the time you get to the locker room, depending on where you're playing, you get about 14 minutes. We've had 5 days and 8 to 10 hours of practice with kids. If they don't have that, what are they going to pick up in 14 minutes? To me, it's fixing eye discipline in certain sets and certain coverages, making sure our reads are right, maybe a wrinkle or two off a play that you already have in. But to say that you have some type of wholesale change at halftime is just ridiculous, especially at the high school level. You got 14 minutes to try and explain something to offensive or defensive kids that practiced it for 10 hours. If you worked on a game plan for 10 hours and it wasn't very good, and they're not executing it, I don't know how many changes you can make at halftime. Halftime is probably more of a mental adjustment, an attitude adjustment, a physicality adjustment. And then there's some system things that you can do in there. And obviously some guys are better at it than others, but I don't think it's as big of a thing as people make. Putnam County, and they have no middle school football programs. Hard to compete when you're teaching juniors. Yeah, if they've got to have some type of Pop Warner football, though. If they have if those kids are playing football somewhere, you just got to figure out where and how to get them back to your high school. If they're not playing junior high, I think there's a county near us and near you and near me that doesn't play as much junior high football. They play more club football and Pop Warner football, and those teams do really, really well. So it's possible as long as the kids are playing football. Merry Christmas, Chris. Yeah, getting your point across, reiterating your message. To me, with coordinators, halftime's about looking at your numbers and are you matching the game plan that you practiced? You worked on things all week, run to pass ratio, a base to movement ratio, a blitz to zone pressure to man pressure ratio. Are you calling those things that the game plan was set up to do? Are you doing the things that you did in practice? That to me is a bigger deal at halftime with your coaches. So I appreciate you guys being on tonight, especially with Monday Night Football. It's crazy. It's wild, wild west, but it is what it is, Chris. And if you're going to get high school players, you got to get them somewhere. if you're getting kids in your community, they have to play football somewhere. So if they can play, even though it is the Wild Wild West at that level, if they're playing any football, it's better than none. So I appreciate you guys being on tonight with Monday Night Football and everything else that's going on. I just wanted a chance to say happy holidays to everybody. Thanks for everything you do for PlayFest. My dinner has been sitting to my left for an hour when my wife brought it in. So it's about time for me to heat it up and eat. But thanks for everything you guys do for me. Thanks for tonight. Thanks for all these chats. Thanks for watching the videos. Thanks for following me on Twitter and Instagram. Have a happy new year. If I don't talk to you before then, be safe. And good luck to everybody in the new year. I look forward to talking to everybody in 2021. Hopefully we can get our clinic rolling again. Have a good holiday, Chris. Hopefully we can get our clinic rolling again in 2021, and I get to see some people nationally and maybe even internationally. So looking forward to all those things, and thank you for everything you guys do for me. May your families have a great holiday. May you be safe and healthy. And as always, guys, you won't play well until you play fast. I'll catch you next time.